All right, so the beginning of our presentation, Sherry's picture for today, came from the 100-year bloom in Death Valley. That was a spectacular time of year. It had heavy rain, came through, and what you're seeing is all this grass and cactus blooming, and we were up on the hillside, just a lush hillside of green. And here's these beautiful flowers blooming. It was just such a joy to be there, and I just love how Sherry just captures the story of the buds and the bloom, and I hope you enjoy that. It's one of those beautiful pictures. Thank you, Sherry. We are, of course, now doing chapter 15. This chapter, keep in mind, as God unfolds the book of Revelation, He is revealing to you His thoughts. Revelation is His word that John heard in his mind and wrote down with his pen. And John is trying to tell you that God is on your side, that He wants to redeem you. He wants to share eternity with every single person on this planet. He longs for all of His children to be redeemed. Now, I believe Revelation is a present book that is unfolding in our time. It is relevant today. Chapter 15 is going to move us forward in time and give us an introduction to the plagues. Our next presentation will be the plagues themselves. That's chapter 16. But today, you're going to get just the introduction to them as how John saw and has written it down for us to study. So let me jump right in with verse 1 of chapter 15. It says, "Then I saw another sign in heaven, great and marvelous." In other words, John is just astounded. He sees 7 angels having the 7 last plagues, for in them the wrath of God is complete. Now, the wrath of God, that's a highly controversial sentence, because there are some folks I know that say there's no such thing as the wrath of God. And there are those who believe the wrath of God is going to torture people for eternity. So those are the two extremes. The truth lies somewhere between those 2 points. My notes on this slide are this. These extraordinary angels, this incredible sign, this marvelous and great sign that John has seen, he sees these extraordinary angels, or God's messengers, having possession of the wrath of God. Now, God's wrath is His response to the persecution and the war of the unholy Trinity declared on God's people. This is a parallel story to the deliverance of Israel from Egypt. The wrath of God has a work to do. Those 7 last plagues need to reveal the truth of every person's decision. So if you go back and look at the story in Exodus, those plagues fell because Pharaoh refused to let God's people go. And each one became more intense than the previous one, giving the Pharaoh, his administration, and his nation every opportunity to come alongside of God and work in harmony with Him. But in the refusing, the more Pharaoh refused, the harder his heart became. So I want to say that when we look at these plagues, there's a parallel story there. Just tuck that away and think about it. Verse 2, "And I saw something like a sea of glass mixed with fire. And those who had been victorious over the beast in his image and the number of his name, standing on the sea of glass, holding the harps of God." Now, I made a note there on this slide for you. The sea of glass is mixed with fire. That word for fire is like lightning. Okay? And it's different than the sea of glass in Revelation 4. This sea has an internal illumination inside of it. And maybe it's a vibrant, almost pulsating light, if you would, like lightning. And I think that's sort of a beautiful thing. But this is also a group that has had victory over the beast, its image, and his name. And they stand as one people by faith alone in the presence of the Lamb. Now listen carefully. We are seeing their victory in advance before the plagues fall, as if by faith they're in the very presence of the Lamb. Just like the 144,000 are cut up on Mount Zion by faith, following the Lamb wherever he goes, is where the power comes for them to become the messengers of God and make proclamation to the last gospel invitation to the world. Verse 3. It says, "And they sang the song of Moses, the bondservant of God, and the song of the Lamb." Now, the Song of Moses here is a celebration of his deliverance now. It is a contemporary song. In other words, it's a brand new song for the people who are singing it. And they are singing the song of their deliverance by power of the Lamb by faith alone. This time, it is the final exodus from the sin and the darkness of this earth. Continuing, verse 3. "Great and marvelous are your works, O Lord, the Almighty. Righteous and true are your ways, King of the nations." So listen to how they sing this song. It is a song of praise of God's deliverance, that his righteousness and his truth and his ways are the power of deliverance. It's God's works in them that leads them to sing this beautiful hymn. Notice verse 4. "Who will not fear, O Lord, and glorify your name?" Now, this is so beautiful because John wrote in his Gospel of John, perfect love casts out all fear. And notice here in verse 4, these are the ones who will not fear, O Lord, and glorify your name. Because if you are resting in Christ, no one can take away your assurance. It belongs to you. It's a gift from God. And you are secure and confident in the power of God to see you through. That becomes part of the song that they are singing every day. It says, "For you alone are holy, for all the nations will come and worship before you, for your righteous acts have been revealed." Every act of God is an act of your vindication, of your salvation, of your preparation to stand in this time. This is the song of the redeemed. Notice verse 5. "After these things I looked, and the temple of the tabernacle of the testimony in heaven was open." Now pay attention here. This is so vitally important to hear that the temple is opened at this moment, because it's not going to remain open. But as long as that room is open, that access to the temple in heaven, to the tabernacle, that is where the ministration of Christ, who is our advocate, who is our intercessor, as long as it is opened, he is there ministering God's grace on our behalf, our saving grace. Verse 6. "And the 7 angels who had the 7 plagues came out of the temple, clothed in linen, clean and bright, and girded around their chest with golden sashes." Now what's really interesting to me about this verse is this, that these messengers of God, these 7 particular messengers, these divine beings, have the garment of what would be a priest. In other words, they're ministers in the tabernacle of God. I also want you to notice they're coming out with the 7 plagues, and a plague of God just fits in a golden bowl in their hands. Isn't that amazing? Verse 7. "Then one of the 4 living creatures gave to the 7 angels 7 golden bowls full of the wrath of God, who lives forever and ever." Verse 8. "And the temple was filled with smoke from the glory of God and from his power, and no one was able to enter the temple until the 7 plagues of the 7 angels were finished." Now, if no one's able to enter, that tells you an incredible change has taken place in the heavenly realm. If no one was able to enter, you see, so far in the book of Revelation, anyone 24/7 was able to access by faith the throne room of God to come into the presence of Jesus. But when no one is able to enter intercession on their behalf, then human probation closes. Intercession is finished. which then would tell us that everyone has decided who it is that they're going to worship. Either the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world, or the unholy trinity, the beast and the false prophet and the dragon. So in the book of Revelation, it tells you that the entire world is moving towards a final decision. This is what chapters 15 and 16 are going to be telling us. Now, you have a standing invitation to begin a conversation with Jesus anytime, 24/7. Any day of the week, night or day, it does not matter. You have that gift of access. So here's my challenge for you. Don't put it off much longer. Keep that conversation going. Keep that discussion with Jesus about the truth of who He is and His power to save you. Keep that door open. Do not refuse that invitation. Don't postpone it. Keep it open. Because the alternative is to not worship the Lamb, but to worship the beast and the unholy trinity. Just a simple invitation. Oh, and thank you, Sherry. This is a short presentation today. This is one of those fabulous animals just standing by the road that you just can't get too much of. Okay, antelopes are quite lovely, pronghorn to some. This one wouldn't get out of the way of the road, and so it finally walked off the side of the road and posed for Sherry. I hope you enjoyed this short presentation with chapter 15. Chapter 16 will be coming up shortly. Enjoy.